Alright, so I've been trying to think of how best to do this thing that I'm about to review, and the conclusion I came to is to just take a break after each movie and just give my general thoughts and maybe a score. So we are going to be watching all of the Rebuild of Eva tetralogy. This is Thursday right now, and I'm hoping to finish it by Saturday evening at the very latest Sunday morning and have this up by then. We'll see how this goes. So we're going to start with Eva 1.11, You Are Not Alone. Alright, finished the first Eva movie. General thoughts right at the gate, slightly underwhelmed. I should probably also explain a bit of my history with Evangelion. I want to start this with two thoughts. So, my history with Eva, I first watched it in college, and I hated the ending of the TV series and the ending of the movie, which has been completely flipped upon my second rewatch. The TV series plus End of Evangelion is currently in my top 10. I just didn't get the ending the first time I watched it. And so when I followed that up with the first two Rebuild films, I ended up loving them back then. Then eventually I watched 3.0 and was completely confused. I had no idea what to think. But now is now. So that's my brief history with Eva. And the second thing I want to bring up that's not really going to be relevant until probably the third movie, but I'm going to bring it up now just to keep it in your heads for later. And it's this single statement. Meta-narrative does not work if the base narrative also doesn't work. That is the statement. Meta-narrative does not work if you do not have a working base narrative. I will elaborate on that more when we get to it in 3.0. But for now, just keep that in the back of your head. So, on to the actual focus right now. 1.11, You Are Not Alone. It's just a condensing of the first 6 episodes, for the most part, with a little bit of stuff added in to foreshadow stuff later. Some stuff is taken out, I guess, because... Okay, and here's another thing I was struggling the entire time watching this movie, how I should be viewing this. Should I be viewing this solely as a remake, a rebuild of Evangelion, or should I view it as a sequel, which supposedly it is, because it was never billed as a sequel. It was billed as a remake. So, ultimately the conclusion I came to is I should view it as both. It should be both a sequel to Evangelion, if that's what it's going for. Again, I haven't seen past 3.0, so I can't say for certain that it is a sequel at this point. I'm just going off of what everyone else has said. I guess successor would be a better term than sequel. But in any case, I'm going to be approaching this both as the Rebuild of Evangelion should be an adequate successor to Neon Genesis Evangelion and End of Evangelion, and also this should be a remake that stands on its own. If you disagree with that, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm sure as this series goes on, I will drift more towards one of these things. Probably the former. But as for now, this is just a slightly condensed version of the first 6 episodes. I did the math and it cuts off approximately a half hour of content. Approximately. Like the movie's 104 without credits. The movie's about like 138 minutes, I think, and without credits, the TV series is like 26 times 6, or 22 times 6, I should say. So that's 120, 132 minutes. So 2 hours and 12 minutes. So I can't do math. So yeah, about a half hour of condensing. And it feels like that. It feels like a rushed version of the first 6 episodes, which is unfortunate because the first 6 episodes of Evangelion are so incredibly well paced. Like, that is one of the highlights of the first 6 episodes. They are so tight, but not rushed. There is no dead air. Or not, I shouldn't say there's no dead air. There's no dullness. I'm not looking at my watch when I'm watching the first 6 episodes of Eva. I am completely enraptured by the directing, by the pacing, all of that. With this one, it really feels like we're rushing. Like we're rushing to get this part out of the way, which kind of makes sense if you look back at some old interviews. Like there's one quote in particular where Anno said that once those first 6 episodes were done and he started focusing on Asuka's story, he completely forgot about Rei. I don't know how much to take that seriously, but if that is serious, that explains kind of why Anno might not be invested in the first part of this series, the first 6 episodes, when he's remaking it. He just kind of wants to get it out of the way. But I'm not going to use that as an excuse for why it rushes through things, because it just makes for a lesser product. Again, keep that statement I mentioned earlier in mind. But everything feels slightly less impacting, slightly less compelling, slightly less emotionally investing. Like, the point where it took until, like, right before the climax of the fight with Ramiel, with the sniper, or the positron cannon, I should say. It took right up until Misato showing Shinji Lilith for me to get invested in this version of Shinji. Like, I understood Shinji, mostly because I already understand Shinji from Neon Genesis. This version of Shinji, I don't quite understand. I understand this version of Shinji. I'm not invested in this version of Shinji until near the end of this series, or near the end of this movie. Same with Rei. I understand. Well, Rei's pretty much the same as she is in the TV series. Again, slightly condensed. But I'll give credit on that. Rei is probably one of the stronger elements of this movie. Misato, on the other hand, again, bit condensed. Not as much going on with her as was in the first 6 episodes. Just slightly less information. And somehow all of the information that they picked out was the stuff that really made these characters come to life in the first 6 episodes of the TV series. And that's really the major takeaway from this with me. Aside from that, it's kind of hit and miss everywhere else. Like, a lot of my investment in this movie really came from Megumi Ogata's portrayal as Shinji. She's doing some fucking work. Like, her screaming is fucking top notch in terms of, like, this feels like someone who is in pain. Ogata is doing is really moving this character. And I will say the tense moments, like those horror moments, are probably the most thrilling, like, investing moments in this movie. Like when Shinji's getting shot at by angels or having his arm broken and he's just screaming in pain. Those, like, the way it's shot and the way it looked, the way it's drawn and the acting and all that, it works. It really works. I'm gonna try and give credit where credit is due on these. So that works. The animation overall is pretty solid. I'm not gonna say it is definitely not one of the best looking anime movies I've seen. It looks like a slightly upgraded version of a TV series. Like a couple weeks ago I watched the Martian successor Nadesco movie, Prince of Darkness. That is a phenomenal looking movie. Not a great written movie, but it's a phenomenal looking movie. That looks way better than this movie. Like, there's good animation in this movie, but there's a lot of other things that I'm not quite fond of. I'm going to hold off on my comments on the CG. It looks fine here. I could have done without it, but it's not wholly detracting. Especially with Ramiel, I think it's extremely hit and miss. Like, some of it looks really kind of terrifying, and like this is some kind of Lovecraftian monster, some kind of biblical monster. And then other times it just looks like fucking weird and goofy. So that's my take on that. My big takeaway, though, is I do not like the color design for this movie. Just something about it seems off. Like, the back end of this movie, or the back third or back quarter, it's better. And there are shots throughout where it looks better, like the more artistic shots where there's a lot of heavy shadow, monochrome colored palettes. But when it's just trying to convey a scene, a normal scene, it either looks totally bland and uninteresting, or it actually looks kind of muddled and difficult to parse things out. Like, especially in, like, sunset scenes. That's when this movie looks the worst. It just looks... The colors are bleeding into everything, and it just doesn't look good. And now, to be fair, people who know me will probably bring this up. This is the same color designer as the My Hero TV series. To be fair, the color design is one of the things that I'm less thrilled about with the My Hero TV series. I'm not going to say... I think it works a little better there, because My Hero is supposed to look kind of goofy with color design, and how all these wacky superheroes are supposed to stand out with their colorful costumes and stuff. But it's still not my favorite thing about the series. So, I will be totally fair that I think I just don't like this color designer. I'll have to look up what else they've done and do a follow-up maybe when I get to the second movie. But that just didn't work for me. And also the music was also a bit more hit and miss than I would have liked. And I've said in the past, in just tweets and stuff, and this is a video that I've wanted to make for a while. I've wanted to make a video about Shirosagi Su for a while, because he's such a fascinating composer. His stuff is so dense and complex and orchestral. And most of the time, I don't think his soundtracks fit with the TV series they're attached to. Unless they're attached to a really strong director, like with Anno and stuff like Neon Genesis and Kare Kano. Because otherwise he just completely runs out of control, like with stuff like Magi and the Berserk remake, the Berserk 2016. Noriyuki Abe kind of had him under control in Bleach, but even then, well, I don't know enough about the Bleach anime to truly say, but that one has some very Shirosagi-su moments in it. But to the Rebuild specifically, there were some moments where it really worked, and some moments where he just completely overpowers the scene with his music in ways that just don't work. And that's that's pretty much all I have to say on that. Overall, it's an okay movie. It's an okay action movie. Like, I'm thinking probably like a 6 out of 10. Like a decent, maybe a strong 6. The action scenes are good. The acting is good. Not so much the character acting, like the animation feels very stiff at times, but the the voice acting is good. But it just feels like a condensed action movie. That's what it feels like. And based on my memory of the other 2 movies that I've seen, this is the one that I hate using this phrasing because of the implications of it, but this one feels like... Fuck it, I'll just say it. This one feels like it has the least attention paid to it. This one is just a remake of the first 6 episodes with a couple scenes added in here and there. I think that's the general consensus on this. But I don't give a fuck about general consensus. I'm just going to say what I feel. And that is what I feel. So, that's all I have to say on the first movie. There is one more note. I am curious to see if this particular idea holds up. I saw this quote. I forgot who said it, but I saw this on Twitter. Someone described the 4 Eva rebuilds as what we expected, what we wanted, what we deserved, and what we needed. So I'm going to see how well that holds up as this goes on. Because based on my memory of the first 3, that's pretty on point so far. So we'll see how that goes. On to movie 2.